Hello, good morning, welcome. I am Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. You are on Damn Radio, damradio.com/live, internationalflavor.com, only internationalflavor.com. No little extras afterward. You can go there and find all the old content, last week's shows, stuff like that. It's already Tuesday. Already Tuesday, and the weather is good. We've had some extremely fortunate weather here in mid-Missouri, and I am headed to Florida. Got to go to Florida today, and that'll be exciting. Or not, depending on how you look at it. It's freaking hot down there, and I've never really become a fan, but I'm not against it. It's just I'm not necessarily for it. So it's not, I mean, people love it because of the weather. And you know what I like? I like, this is going to sound terrible, I like wandering around the house in some boxers or something, or some jammy pants, because it's comfortable. You know, you can just wander around. Not so in Missouri. It doesn't matter. It's still cold in the house. You can't keep your house at like 78. You know, that's an unfortunate part of life. So that part I did kind of like. Anyway, that is not where I really intended to go today. We still got war in the world, and people aren't concerned with my heat. The necessity for heat and the aversion to cold weather in my old age. You know, I grew up a significant portion of my childhood in places where it got really cold in the winter. Utah, Colorado, Minnesota. And Minnesota is freaking cold. I do recall it snowing once on my mother's birthday, June the 3rd. And that was an interesting holiday. And at any rate, and I loved it then. You know, in Minnesota, the snow don't slow you down. Why would it? You know, it's like the heat doesn't slow you down in Qatar. And, you know, but there it was too damn hot. You know, you didn't sleep too much. Anyway, are we really talking about the weather? Does anybody really know what time it is? And does anybody really care? I wanted to talk about a draft dodger who really, now this is exciting, okay? This is the 31-year-old has asked for asylum. So he's a Ukrainian trying to avoid the war. And he has dodged the draft in a plane that, let's see, he asked for asylum in Romania and cited his desire to avoid the draft. So Ukrainian man is facing charges in Romania after fleeing to the country in a small aircraft to escape the draft. According to the Romanian border police, the man crossed the border in the mountainous region of northern Romania. I always wanted to get to Romania because I learned how to say mulțumesc frumos. And mulțumesc frumos in Romanian means good morning. And I learned that when I was in neighboring Moldova, because Moldova used to be a part of Romania. And Transylvania is also, as I understand, in the eastern mountainous portions of Romania. And so I wanted to get there, but we couldn't go there after the collapse of the wall. And they were all, because we tried. It was when I was in Moldova, way back when, working for who? I hate to admit it. U.S. Agency for International Development borrowed us interpreters and sent us over there. And I was in charge of a team. Had a guy named Lindsay running the Larry Lindsay, Lawrence Lindsay, major, one each, OD green in color. Actually, he was an African-American man. And he was a real good guy, but they wouldn't talk to him. Nobody would talk to him. There were very, very, very very, very few black people in Romania, in Moldova, and nobody would talk to him. And he was in charge of our team. And on the plane over, he said to me, he goes, Sergeant Trapp, I hear and he didn't know, he hadn't been there either, but he was one of the few in the Proud in Russia too, for that matter. But that's changed a little bit on the Russian side. I don't know about the Moldovan side. Anyway, I'm wandering today, but he Larry was a good guy, and he said, Sergeant Trapp, nobody's going to talk to me. I said, sir, if nobody talks to you, we're going to be here for like 18 weeks. We're here for a long time delivering humanitarian aid, which all got stolen anyway. And it was corrupt. And they didn't care either if you reported it to somebody. This was after the collapse, and everybody was stealing everything they could. And so everything we delivered got stolen anyway, and we found it in the markets on the weekend. And it's like, hey, we just gave this to a hospital, and here it is being sold as if somebody brought them a brand new container full of drugs, and here's the drugs for sale at the local yarmulke. It was right in the market, and they were for sale, and it's like, hey, can I buy some? You're buying your own stuff. Anyway, sorry, that's a terrible story, but it's true. And don't think that the exact same damn thing isn't happening with your stuff right now in Ukraine, in anywhere that's being sent, because that's the way the world works in other places that are not organized. In Ukraine, absolutely not. Organized crime, they steal everything. And so the Ukrainian man flied across to Romania to go to become a vampire in Transylvania. And he's going, according to the Romanian border police, he crossed the border in the mountainous region of northern Romania, very nice area, allegedly, and I wish to go there, landing in a field near the village of Fratuli Veci in Suceava County on Sunday. The photos shared by Romanian media. It's a cool photo. It's a one-man aircraft. And photos shared by Romanian media show that he used a German-made Icarus Comco C-22. We need to get one of these. We need an Icarus Comco C-22, a two-seater, high-wing, tricycle gear, ultralight aircraft. Residents who spotted it alerted emergency services, prompting a response from local police and the border guards. Officers identified the man as 31-year-old Ukrainian, with database checks confirming he had not entered Romania legally. Nope, he didn't. He flew on in. He's lucky he didn't get shot down. He was taken to the local border police headquarters where he requested asylum, saying he was fleeing the draft in Ukraine. And in Romanian, it says, the story, I can't translate it, but Ukraine did, whatever. But there it is. They got several pictures of his little plane and all of the excitement. Police said his claim will be reviewed by the General Inspectorate for Immigration, and he can remain in the country until a decision is made, just like we do for illegals, okay? So illegals come wandering in, and we allow them to stay until they get before a judge. That's the little piece of paper they get. Well, Romania has such sophisticated methods as well. And they really don't care for Ukraine right now. And nobody does over there. And so a lot of them are, anti this whole stuff and think that Ukraine just needs to shut the hell up and settle it. You've lost that land anyway, and it's not gonna, nothing good is gonna happen. Oh, 99-year-old, what the hell was his name? Oh, son of a nutcracker. I can't remember his name. The key Watergate witness is dead at the age of 99. Oh, darn it. What's his name? I know it, and I can't pull it. well, it doesn't matter. We're going to go back to the Ukrainian who ran away. He will be able to stay in the country. The authorities have opened a criminal case against him. See, here's what they do that we don't do when you're talking about illegal immigration. We don't open up criminal cases against them for illegal border crossings. Oh, no, not in America. We honor you and give you Social Security. You need to have some money. You've escaped your country. You escaped that terrible Ukraine, and here you come, boy. Here's $3,000 a month. We need you to live well as long as you're going to be here. We can't have you wander in the streets without any money. So here's some pocket change. Here's your Obama phone. Here's your free what do you call it? Food card. What do they get? The food. I don't remember, but they get a food card. And then they get, so you get a food card, you get $3,000 a month, you get, here's your house. You need to have Section 8 sort of housing. Here you go. Here's your free house. And that is, completely free of charge. And if you don't like this place, we'll move you to a hotel down the street because you're only going to be here a year and a half while this happens. Maybe 3 years if you're in America. So in Ukraine, this guy's living pretty here, so he doesn't have to go back and be drafted. But let me tell you, I'll bet you anything that this guy, right now, very seriously, either this guy will end up dead, some Ukrainian special forces unit will come over and kill him, or somebody will pull a Donald Trump style, I got to go steal Maduro, and but the Ukrainians will do it, and we all know they are classy. They're going to save the world from Iran. Remember, they're going to come and teach the NATO how to fight Iranian drones because they've been fighting Iranian model drones that were manufactured in Russia and upgraded seriously, by the way, in Russia. But Ukrainians know how to fight those Iranian drones, and therefore their teams could probably come over and take over Cuba, which I hear everybody's on the borders of Cuba right now. Cuba's without power right now, and the Iranian war is gonna end, according to one story I heard last night. That said that, you know what, all these Americans are going to leave, and they're going to leave Israel and the Arabic countries hanging. Why? Because the power is out in Cuba, and Donald Trump has a better opportunity to steal Cuba than he would ever have at stealing Iran. And so he wants to surrender now. I'm reading this. Trump says no deal with Iran to end the war without an unconditional surrender. And probably he gets to pick the next leader. We're living in comedy times. This is like Comedy Central, or better, Comedy Klub, which is comedy club in Russia, which are very hilarious. They have some seriously funny shows over there. So anyway, back to the Ukrainian. The Ukrainian border authorities have been notified. So this is his death sentence right here. This is how you die avoiding the Ukrainian war. Well, if you're not going to die on the front and be part of the meat assault, as they call it, if you are not going to be part of the meat assault, then we'll kill you another way. We'll figure out how to sneak into Romania. We'll probably use several of the planes like you bought, the ultralight German models, fly in, bomb you, turn around, fly back, and you'll be dead. Or you can come in and just die on the front lines like you're supposed to, right? The Ukrainian military faces a deepening manpower crisis due to the battlefield losses, draft evasion, which is in the number of nearly 400,000 have ran away, like this guy. A lot of them in America, a lot of them in, a butt ton of them in Europe, and then Russia has more than any of them combined. They've gone to Russia. And, well, they speak Russian. It's easy, right? You don't have to go learn Romanian and learn how to say mulțumesc frumos, right? So you take off to the neighboring sides, and, you're not going to go die for them, and you know that Russia's going to win anyway. And so long-term, your best option, go to Russia, right? Because the U.S. is no longer going to give you Tamagotchi. The Ukrainian military does face a deep manpower crisis, though. And some infantry companies are reportedly operating at 30 to 40% strength. With a few volunteers, very few, Kiev relies heavily on mandatory conscription, which is the story in and of itself, because they're beating the crap out of people in the streets. Now the Ukrainians have armed them. These, what do they call them? It's bussification is the word they're using. Bussification is the word for a horror story, getting the crap beat out of you, thrown in a van and dragged off to get a whole 2 weeks of training, and then thrown into the meat assault line on the front lines and, and die. So they have, with few, and I don't mean to laugh about that. If it wasn't so sad, it would be funny, but it's truly sad. And Kiev relies on mandatory conscription, a highly divisive issue, because a lot of people, those remaining, if you weren't with the initial crowd that was, the standard idiots trained by the U.S. to think that they are going to win and that Russia is just going to capitulate, those idiots that are just like our idiots everywhere that think that Ukraine and Iran and even Cuba and in some extents Venezuela are just going to bend over. They're just waiting their time out. That's it. They're waiting their time out. They know Donald Trump is a temporary 3-year, and the one thing that you cannot stop, time will never end. And so therefore these people, all they're doing is playing the game. And all they got to do is survive. That's it. And so they're doing whatever they can to survive so that he doesn't kill everybody in Venezuela. He doesn't kill everybody in the Middle East. He doesn't kill everybody in eastern Ukraine because, unfortunately, that's the way it looks to me right now. That's all we're doing. We're out there. We have zero reason to take over Cuba. We have zero reason to take over. We don't have we have oil. That's always a reason. If you accept that is the reason, and geez, we have to secure the international oil market. Well, guess what? If you hadn't cocked it up in the first place, you wouldn't have to fix it, would you? And now we got to go and get involved in wars where we don't need to be. You're not going to solve the Persian Empire, which has been around for 2,500 years, with 2 weeks of bombing. It's not going to happen. And the Iranians aren't going to allow it. By the way, neither is anyone else in the region. Just not going to happen. So... And Cuba, I'm not sure what'll go on down there. Marco Rubio will be all over that. And we can have all kinds of excitement down there in Cuba. And in Venezuela, we have to take over the Gulf of America. We got to take it over. Anybody in there? Didn't you read the memo? The memo says it's Gulf of America. That's it. You're not American. Get out. Or become American. Cuba can be 50. Where are we at? 53? No, 54, because Israel is state 51. Canada is 52. Well, you could break that down into 52 A, B, C, D, Ottawa, Quebec, go down the line and give them each a dash designation. Ottawa can be -1. Quebec can be -2. Ontario -3, stuff like that. And you can take all their hockey teams and give them American flags to stitch into their sleeve, and say the captain is Donald Trump. The captain of the team is Donald Trump. And then when you go play soccer down in Cuba, everybody there can have a football in the shape of an American flag. They can sew it on, and it'll have Donald Trump's face on it, right? He's the world conquest god. He's taking over the world. And listen, Iran, capitulate. Venezuela, we get to pick your next leader. Lick my rear end until I'm out of office, and then, maybe J.D. Vance or maybe Rubio or whoever the hell the next moron's going to be can have you lick his rear end too, because we're America. We're America. Listen up. So a few volunteers, heavily mandatory conscription, and highly divisive death issues in Ukraine, and officials tracking draft-eligible men are accused of excessive force, and videos of clashes during bussification, where I shared a news about a guy some of these guys getting the crap beat out of him by a truck driver. Truck driver got out of his truck. They ran in front of him. He almost hit him. And so he got out of his truck and he started beating the crap out of him. I could have killed you. So he's beating the snot out of these two Ukrainian bussification artists. Anyway, now they can use weapons to take these people and they can shoot them. You don't come, we're shooting you. Nonsense. The violent detention of military-age men by recruitment officers are in the Ukrainian media daily. You get new ones daily. Watch Telegram. Watch it. And some of these are pretty darn frightening. And that's democracy, America. We're fighting for democracy. Defense Minister Mikhail Fedorov earlier said around 2 million potential recruits are on a wanted list for draft evasion, and 200,000 troops have deserted. That number is low and crap. That is not the truth. That is nearly double the troops that have deserted. According to the Ukrainian State Border Guard Service, Romania is the top destination for draft evaders. It's not true. Romania's border police said last month that 31,600 men illegally crossed into Romania from February 2022 to February 2026. So 4 years, nearly 32,000 men. That's 8,000 a year. That's what? Where are we in that? About 870 a month, right? We'd be in there somewhere. Well, whatever it is, it's less than 1,000, but more than 500. Let's just get with the easy math. I don't have a calculator in front of me, and I'm too lazy to figure it out myself. Often facing extreme conditions while attempting to reach the border. Many of them died, especially as the route passes through high-altitude mountain terrain and the Tisa River. Although the crossings are illegal, Romanian law generally treats the men as asylum seekers, and after detention, almost all request temporary protections. And under EU and Romanian regulations, they are not deported to Ukraine while their claims are examined. And, I thought it would be interesting to go through a study that would say how many actually get to stay of this 8,000 a year versus how many get sent back, because there's 32,000 and you wonder, in the beginning, they probably let them stay more than they're letting them now. There's probably some agreement between the governments or something. I'm not positive of that. But according to Russia, the Ukrainian army is disappearing. Kiev is losing the attrition war due to a shortage of conscripted reinforcements. And these are actual numbers. They're at 30 to 40% strength in a lot of these, truly. And Kiev's ability to supply fresh soldiers to the front line is severely curtailed, and put the Ukrainian army on a downward spiral. And I still watch the military summary channel, which consolidates all the losses every day and the loss of all the ground. Now, they've concentrated a little bit in Zaporozhye, trying to figure out how to push back right there. But that is small, holding off for a little while. The bigger cities, like, we already talked about Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, which were never going to fall. These are red lines. Ukraine will never lose this. We'll never lose. Well, you're losing it. And now they're toward almost to the big city of Zaporizhia, and they're Dnipropetrovsk along the river there. The places where, and I still maintain the same as I did when this war started and when they were arguing about it even before the war. Well, the war has been going on since 2014, so every time I say something like that, I don't want people to go, gee, the war started in 2022. It did not. It started in 2014 with Ukraine killing their own people after Donetsk and Lugansk said they were going to become independent and maybe join the Russian Federation. They had referenda, and Kiev didn't like it, so they started bombing them and killing their own people. That's what they did, and it was after our well-funded takeover of the Ukrainian government and overthrowing a guy who we didn't like. Standard story, standard American path. We created nothing but, well, let's put it this way. We created far worse turmoil with people like Newland and other people thinking that they get to control the world, like Donald Trump, and I get to pick the next leader of Iran. Yeah, good luck. And it ain't gonna happen. And total capitulation. You may get a victory, a limited victory, but you'll never get total capitulation. We'll be there for 20 years. What would America do? No, and I say stuff like that. Well, but wait, we're going to kick the crap out of more America. All right, let's see. Would you? Seriously, and here's a would you if it's America. So let's assume that the roles were reversed and we had 250 million Muslims come over here, and we're talking the kind that believe that the very, very, very limited kind that chant death to America for public consumption. Because they're not like that in reality. Okay, they're very, Muslim. You can't say Muslim like and mean it as a bad word. That's an idiot talking. That's all. That's because Muslims are not violent people, and so. I might not feel the same only for the because of Israelis. Those guys have a death wish, and they like to give death to other people. You want to look at a war hungry and death people? There you have it. And at least their leaders are that way. And I don't see why people don't condemn them for that type of behavior. Maybe you got some people chanting it in Iran, but they're not going to force their views on other people. They haven't so far, have they? And yeah, but we need to take them out because they say they're gonna. Yeah, people say a lot of things, and Donald Trump saying it and thinking he's going to get away with it. What will be the result? The exact same that it would be here in reverse if we were on the chopping block, as as we call it. What are people doing? They're destroying the infrastructure. You come here to steal our oil? Screw you. We'll blow it all up. You'll have to start all over at least, and then when you build new stuff, we'll blow that up too. If your world, and who's more dependent upon it, us or them? There was some studies that say that 40% of the global oil need is right here, and in America, and the rest of the world. They have their numbers are growing, but they can live through it easier than we can. Okay, so anyway, I've been lecturing. I really don't mean to, but the Ukrainian army's strength is being sapped by mass desertion and public resistance to mandatory conscription. Estimates of Ukrainian military casualties, like dead, 520,000 just in 2025 and 1.5 million since 2022. General Sergei Rudskoy, head of operations at the Russian General Staff, said in an interview Friday. Presently, the Kiev regime has lost the ability to replenish its units through obligatory mobilization. The number of recruitments per month has dropped about 2 times. Ruskoy told Krasnaya Zvezda, the Russian Armed Forces official newspaper, like our Army Times, Navy Times. A trend is forming for the decrease of the Ukrainian army's strength. During his nomination hearings last month, Ukrainian Defense Minister Mikhail Fedorov told lawmakers that 2 million potential recruits were on the wanted list for draft evasion and that 200,000 troops had deserted. Now, this is a guy that's trying to get the job of becoming the defense minister of Ukraine because they have to get rid of everybody because they are corrupt. So he's the next in line applying for that job. And so he says that there's 2 million recruits on the wanted list and 200,000 deserted. That number is really nearly double for at least for the draft evasion troops and the people that had deserted. Okay, so it's closer to 400,000. That 200,000 number was used back in 2024, for God's sake. They were talking about that number. And 2025 was the worst year yet. So this month, humanitarian rights ombudsman Dmitry Lubinets reported a sharp rise in complaints against mobilization enforcers and called it a systemic crisis. New videos of violent confrontation between conscript patrols and civilians are published by Ukrainian media daily, even as authorities claim such footage is fabricated. Oh, no, that's not true. That's people out there, using ChatGPT. In the interview, Rudskoy discussed Russian battlefield progress and technological changes that affect military planning. Modern warfare demands faster AI-assisted decision-making and broad deployment of robotic systems, said he. Mass use of drones in the conflict has made them comparable to artillery in the terms of damage inflicted. Can you imagine? And it's true. It's terrible. I mean, it really is, because these drones are the ability to move your artillery anywhere, and artillery is no longer ballistic. Artillery can fly and avoid your radar, and it does. And the Russians have figured out how, and so have many others, by the way, have figured out how to do the wire guided for long periods of time, and completely avoid. They have electronic warfare modules actually put into the drones. This is what they've returned back to Iran. So in the beginning of the war, Iran had made these Shahed 1, Shahed 2 drones, and then I forget what the other one's called, but they had made all these drones and sent them to Russia. And Russia upgraded them, made them warfare. They've increased their payload, what they can carry. They put larger grips down below to hold the stuff and whatever munition you're going to put in there, because they use them for food too. And half of them are going to be decoy anyway, because the whole game is to do what they're trying to do in Iran, is send over so many that your air defenses, which cost $1 million a shot in order to defend, and you can send over a swarm of drones with only 10, 15 of them with warhead capabilities on them. And so you got to pick and choose with a Patriot missile to shoot down something. That's crazy stuff. So the mass use of drones in the conflict has made them comparable to artillery, for sure, and also comparable to defense busters, what do you call it? Air defense capabilities. You're destroying them. And so what you do is they send over the swarm. They send over, like nightly in Ukraine, they send over 200-300 drones of whatever. And that's 200 small drones. Then they send smaller missiles. Then they send some Kinjali and some of the bigger ones, right? And then they beat up on. That's why all the Patriots are gone over there, and they really don't have any air defense. Mass use of drones in the conflict. The drones have also redefined the front line, creating a zone of blanket kinetic action that extend up to 15 kilometers from friendly positions. And that's true. And there was another story I wished to share with you, and while I do, I'll provide some commentary in it, because this is a pretty serious matter. And the story is titled, Why Zelensky, this came out this morning, and why Zelensky should fear Trump's war with Iran. And, for obvious reasons, but there's some less obvious ones here. Because the outcome will redefine U.S. dominance and leave Europe and Ukraine scrambling. It's an interesting perspective, and it's written by a guy named Valentin Laginov, a Russian journalist, specializes in political process. Ukrainian leader Zelensky and his European partners, they always talk about partners, my partners. Yeah, they're your partners, all right. You're their lackey. Is what it is. Just like Donald Trump and company. Well, and many before him are Netanyahu's lackeys. That's what we are. And his European partners have plenty of reasons to closely monitor the situation in the Middle East. Not just because Donald Trump is wasting valuable air defense missiles that the EU could have purchased for Ukraine. Kiev has already voiced concerns about a shortage of American weapons. And that was in an article, that's in Russian. Russia is wiping its hands of the matter. Ukraine is threatening problems Ukraine is threatened by the problems with the Patriots in the war, according to Reuters. And so that's true, too. So that's a Reuters story coming out. I have the Russian version, though, so I'm not going to read it to you. Nor is it because the White House is going to lose interest in resolving the Ukraine conflict, as the war with Iran, which never should have started, in the opinion of Samuel, drags on. Something Brussels is very worried about. During a meeting with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz on March 3rd, Trump dismissed these insinuations and affirmed that the Ukrainian crisis is his top priority. One of my top priorities, Merz. Come on now. It's a top priority for the administration. You haven't heard crap about it in 2 weeks, but, 10 days, 2 weeks, is coming. And they're bombing the snot out of Iran some more. That I just saw an article that said 200 targets yesterday. The real reason for concern in Kiev and Brussels is on a broader geopolitical level. The fate of Trump's foreign policy doctrine. He has one? Yeah, he's the king of the world, right? I'm king of the world. I said that yesterday, though. I can't repeat it. Poor somebody should do a meme and put Trump's face on the front of the Titanic with instead of DiCaprio saying he's the king of the world, and then we can all hope that it doesn't end as poorly as it ended for poor Leonardo. But the fate of Trump's foreign policy doctrine is currently being decided in the Middle East. And whatever his doctrine is, you can't figure it out. It's, I told you, you're going to get a spanking if you don't follow daddy, like we got Ruta to do way back when. We got Ruta to listen to daddy way back when. And the rest of the world better listen to, or you're going to end up either like Maduro in a federal prison in New York. I wonder if he gets to stay with his wife or not. Or not. Essentially, the outcome of this conflict will determine whether the U.S. plunges into a new, even more hawkish phase defined by might makes right mentality. And might does not make right. And you know, all you mighty people out there should probably learn that lesson. Or returns to a path of moderate peacemaking, which Trump advocated during his campaign and abandoned with such surprising ease. He just got rid of it. Now, when's the last time you heard him say anything about peace? Oh, never. Oh my God, Rick Santorum is still out there advising people. Holy crap, he's on the TV screen. We got to turn those off. I don't like to watch him. So why does Kiev support the dismantling of the rules-based order? You know, where is this alleged rules-based order that exists? And the rules, they exist for everybody but the United States and whoever they choose to put it in. Anybody else has to get UN approval. They have to have, and we're members of we signed the UN Charter. That is a treaty. We are supposed to honor it. We just blew it up. It doesn't matter if you're Donald Trump. It doesn't matter if you're Lindsey Graham and the Hawks who are, oh, geez, we're defending the world against evil in Israel. And I'm telling you, the UN Charter doesn't defend those guys either in Israel. They have been flaunting the rules forever. And now Donald Trump is right in there with them. And he wasn't at first, but he sure is now. And Trump's large-scale military operation against Iran, launched unilaterally by the White House in defiance of international law and the UN Charter, should be perceived by Kiev as unprovoked aggression. This view is underscored by the fact that even the Pentagon acknowledges there is no evidence that Tehran is preparing attacks on either Israel or U.S. bases in the region. In contrast, Russia, prior to launching its military operation in Ukraine, actively urged the guarantors of the Minsk agreements, France and Germany, to take notice of the buildup of Ukrainian forces near the border of Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic and the significant spike in the shelling of those territories in February 22 before they entered Donetsk and Lugansk. They tried to enforce international law repeatedly through both the Minsk Accords and the UN Charter, and people ignored it. Not so here. The Russians actually followed the law, or tried to, but they're not part of the rules-based order, and so they were completely ignored. And by the way, the U.S. was actively helping Ukraine build up the forces, the Ukrainian forces, arming the Ukrainian forces, providing Patriots, missiles, HIMARS, everything U.S. We had training battalions over there training the Ukrainian military to fight Russia. We pushed that. And I don't mean we, me, you. I mean we, America, and the West have been engaged in this crap, and Trump was against it. Well, that's not really true. He let it go on during his first term as well. Because it went on from 2014. After we flipped the internals, right? So I mean, here we go again. That story. And what have we done if we abandon it now? First we can claim we were never involved, right? Well, we were never involved. We're not going to be able to do that under the Trump things. Trump is just one thing you got to respect about it. At least he's blatant about his foolish activities. Where, oh yeah, it's mine. I get to pick the next Iranian leader. That was Lindsey Graham. Why don't you get over there and pick the next one for me and give me some recommendations? That, Lindsey Graham there marching, yeah, with a little flag wandering down the streets of Tehran. That'll be great. Anyway, Russia asked them to take care of it. Even the special monitoring mission of the OSCE, that's the European Security Council, recognized that by mid-February 2022, the intensity of hostilities in the Donbass had reached peak levels similar to those before the ceasefire in 2020. According to the OSCE report from February 19, 5 days before, the SMM recorded 222 ceasefire violations in Donetsk by the Ukrainians, 135 explosions. In the previous reporting period, there were 189 violations. In Lugansk, the mission observed 648 violations and 519 explosions. Ignoring his own aggression against the Russian population in Donbass that led up to the Russian offensive, Zelensky has spent the last 4 years cultivating an image of Ukraine as a victim. They aren't and never have been. Logically, one would expect him to also consider Iran as a victim of unprovoked aggression. But Zelensky chose a different strategy. On the eve of the U.S.-Israeli strike on Tehran, Zelensky claimed that the Iranian people want to change the current regime. Yeah, well, what about Donetsk? What about Lugansk? While it is true that there are people in the Islamic Republic advocating for political change, the most notable, the ones here in America, are hopeful that Trump will choose them to take over. As evidenced by the protests in January, Zelensky seems to have forgotten that his own approval rating was barely above 17% just before the start of the Russian military operations, according to the Kyiv International Institute. Did that mean that the Ukrainian people could have gotten rid of an unpopular president who would soon come to disregard the Ukrainian constitution just as much as he disrespects the UN Charter? Or he is actually quoted as saying that the Minsk Accords, those aren't real agreements. Those don't mean anything. Those aren't real agreements. So we don't have to honor those. That was just to give us time to build up and beat up on these people ourselves. Did that mean the Ukrainian public could have gotten rid of this unpopular president? On February 28, following the U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran, Zelensky revealed a personal motive for supporting Trump's actions, and he argued that Iran has backed Russia in the Ukraine conflict. His contradictory stance on the war with Iran goes beyond the fact that his power hinges on the duration of the conflict with Russia. The problem isn't just the fact that the Ukrainian military relies on European purchase of American weapons. The deeper issue lies in the changing social dynamics with Ukraine. The people are exhausted and eager to put an end to the war, as evidenced by increasing resistance against forced mobilization. To navigate the delicate balance between maintaining his grip on power and creating the illusion of considering public interests, Zelensky has to keep some sort of dialogue open with Russia. In the current negotiation process, the U.S. is the only party Moscow is prepared to engage with regarding the principles for ending the conflict. A complete loss of the U.S. as a partner would mean the collapse of any dialogue with Moscow, effectively dismissing the last chance for a diplomatic resolution. Something's going on in here. Hang on one second. I don't know why, but some strange things going on. Anyway, is Europe hypocritical? Yes. There's a question. They're always hypocritical. The EU finds itself in an even more precarious position. Assessing Trump's action in the Middle East, it tries to avoid using phrases like unprovoked invasion, Trump's war against Iran, or full-scale war, full-scale invasions. That, and I've pointed this out a bunch of times, the Western media and politicians of all levels frequently use in reference to Russia. I want you to pick Lindsey Graham as your bastion of grammar police here, or narrative police. Never will you hear him say, this unfortunate conflict in Ukraine. You will always hear him say, Putin's unprovoked full-scale war. That is what you will hear. And that's what you hear from people who are selling you something. They can't just talk about a conflict. They have to talk about the person who is not accused. If you say it often enough, Putin's war, Putin's unprovoked war, full-scale invasion. This was none of the above. None of the above, but politicians put out these talking points and lie to you. That's what they do. That is their job. They have these talking point memos that come from whoever controls them, or based upon whatever narrative they all need to match in order to convince you that Iran, for example, wants Donald Trump that the people are rooting for Donald Trump in Iran. My ass, they aren't rooting for anything over there except to end the war and get back to the way it was, to living, to not having some aggressor from the other side of the planet coming to steal your oil, which is all this is. And well, not necessarily from the Israeli side, but they benefit by destroying it. And you've watched the creep of territorial gains in Israel for years, and they're just taking more land. Geez, there's more people that we got to import. Come on, we need more land. Just like America, we need Venezuela, we need Cuba, we need Greenland. And by the way, Canada, shut up, or we're taking you too. We're going to take you. Anyway, now, except for Spain, almost everyone is eager to support Trump. It turns out that bombing another country for the purpose of who knows what, Trump administration hasn't even provided an official justification for the war, is viewed as the right move. And that's true. He hasn't. His justifications are BS. There's zero reason for us to do it. He gets to pick a leader in another country. Why? Why? I mean, what is the real reason that he is given? Nothing. We need regime change. We need to get rid of the people of Iran need us. It's democracy. What? You think Qatar is a democracy? Qatar is not a democracy. There's a prince over there, and he is in charge. Trust me, he is in charge, and the rest of the people are not. Okay, and every country over there, Saudi has what? A prince. I mean, geez, if we want to fight for democracy, Iran is not the place to do it. This is nonsense all the way across the board. So anyway, let's see. Now, except for Spain, it turns out that bombing another country is viewed as the right move, while Iran's retaliatory actions are dismissed as unwarranted aggression. So the aggressor has become Iran. But who started this? Israel and the United States started it. And now it's unwarranted aggression. Diplomacy doesn't matter. Only who's carrying, who's swinging the biggest wiener. That's it. And they are dismissed as unwarranted aggression if you're an Iranian toward other Middle Eastern nations, also lacking in democracy. It seems that the Europeans failed to grasp one critical point. If the U.S. achieves any significant success in the Middle East, the hawks in Washington will regain strength, and Trump will take more radical steps to implement his doctrine, which so far is only the law of the strongest, the fist. I'm in charge. You're not. Sit down and shut up. For Europe, this could very well mean losing Greenland. You know, what if somebody goes, all right, Trump, take Greenland. Jesus, we don't want to go through this again. You know, take Greenland, take Cuba, take Venezuela. Jesus, take the whole world. The whole world's America, because Donald Trump said so. World war is coming under these terms. I hate to be who's the Chicken Little wandering around looking at the sky is falling, but the sky's freaking falling. The sky's falling. That Sam's a nut. He's a Chicken Little. Maybe I am, but I sure hope not. These people are nuts, and we have the law of the strongest is fully in charge in America. And we got the big football team. They're ready to go. And Rubio, who's sitting on the bench now? It's the only sane voice in the room, apparently, is the vice president. But you don't see much of him these days. Nope. Because he's against all of this. And you know what? I think that they've sidelined the guy. Seriously. For Europe, this means probably losing Greenland. The EU support for Trump should be viewed through the lens of the settlement or prolongation of the Ukraine crisis. Europe has effectively removed itself from the negotiation process by presenting ultimatums that Russia would never agree to. A recent example is the so-called Kallas list drafted by the EU foreign policy genius Kaja Kallas, which was recently shared with European nations. The document outlined the EU's demand to Russia for resolving the Ukrainian crisis. Among other things, this is what the losers are trying to force upon Russia. Okay, the loser gets to dictate terms to Russia. Ready? Among other things, it calls for a reduction in Russian troops and their withdrawal from neighboring countries like Belarus. See, they want to take over Belarus badly. They want Belarus. And Belarus is the same thing as Ukraine, but Lukashenko is there, and Lukashenko is a strong supporter of Russia. And they're hoping that the next one comes in and that Lukashenko dies, is all they can hope for, and that they can bring somebody back who will make Belarus the same as Ukraine and turn it into a war zone so that Europe can get free gas and oil from the Russian side. They can get that, and they can do the same takeover in that regard, because if they can get there, then they can get through the wide steps to the west, and step with an E on the end, and they can then force their way into the remaining parts of Russia and cause turmoil, wreak havoc, steal oil and gas and other natural resources from Russia. So, their withdrawal they also want reparation payments and some form of democratization of society. And seriously, Moscow will not consider this document. Moreover, the EU can't even reach a consensus on whether to resume any did I say consensus? Consensus with whether to resume dialogue with Russia or not. Under these circumstances, Moscow does not view the EU as a credible partner regarding the post-conflict security framework on the European continent. They are not. Nonetheless, Europe recognizes the need to take part in the process of negotiation in some capacity to ensure that Moscow and Washington don't make deals that are over their heads. Sit down, you. Sit down. We'll tell you what your agreement is. That bypass Brussels and other Euro nations. So on the one hand, Europe supports the U.S. in order to stay involved in the negotiation process. But on the other, there's likely a very faint hope in Europe that if the hawks regain power in Washington, Trump might make a U-turn and adopt an anti-Russia stance, despite the risk this poses for Europe itself. And what about the old Trumpster? Donald Trump came to power promising no new war abroad and criticizing George W. Bush for the Iraq War. Weapons of mass destruction never existed. Yep, that's true. Yet now he seems to have started the biggest Middle Eastern conflict, they say in 2 decades, I say forever. This contradiction hasn't gone unnoticed by politicians and commentators across the political spectrum. However, it is important to view Trump's actions in a broader context. His seemingly, now I don't believe this, but I believe the final point of this, but his seemingly disconnected moves in Europe, Greenland, Latin America, and the Middle East are appearing to form a coherent strategy. Essentially, Trump is shifting America's focus from the export of democracy to the direct destabilization of undesirable regimes, I say picked by Lindsey Graham, either to weaken them, as we are witnessing in Iran, or to install their own loyal governments without any superficial democratization, as seen in Venezuela. And Trump is saying the same. I get to pick who's in charge. I pick. It's it. It's me. I'm king. This is my risk board. The rest of you, forget it. Go play some other game because I have all the pieces. Trump no longer relies on alliances. It seems he's not even concerned with the opinions of Europe and currently shows no intention of even defending the Gulf monarchies. That's why it is quite curious to see how the European establishment, represented by Merz, is eager to please Trump. As for Trump, he is unapologetically blunt in his assessment. Germany is excellent because it does what he wants. Spain is terrible. It dared to stand up to him, but who cares what Madrid thinks? The U.S. will lose its bases in Madrid anyway. And with the U.K., he's disappointed because it doesn't support him as fervently as the vassal state is supposed to. Trump also had some unpleasant words for the old Z-monster, referring to him as P.T. Barnum, the 19th century American showman known for promoting sensational hoaxes. Trump is clearly signaling to Europe and Ukraine that it occupies a secondary role in his worldview. He's attempting to recreate a contested form of hegemony. It is not about multipolarity championed by Russia, China, and countries of the global south. Instead, it's a vision for a new kind of global empire where decisions are made unilaterally by the United States without even consulting any close allies like the EU. And there is a lot at stake. We're not just talking about the upcoming midterm elections in November. And I think he's going to lose heavy in November because of this. The future of U.S. global dominance depends on the outcome of the conflict in the Middle East, which will have significant implications for Europe. If the conflict in Iran ends with some sort of tangible success for the U.S., Washington's tone toward Europe, and perhaps even Russia, will shift when it comes to addressing the situation in Ukraine. Conversely, if the military campaign yields no clear result, non-conservatives may suffer a long-lasting defeat, which would also impact the Ukraine crisis. Regardless of the outcome, the lesson learned from the conflict in Iran will undoubtedly influence the shifting power dynamics in Europe. Now, that line of reasoning, as I told you, was my commentary and reading it in between by a guy named Valentin Laginov, who wrote the article. It was first published in, where was it first published? I think it was RT, Russia, and is where it was first published. So I didn't want to not cite the proper person. Let's see. Russia is, for its part, talking about Gulf oil production. Now, Qatar has already shut off its natural gas, and it isn't producing anymore. It is gone. Number 3 in the world, now not producing at all. And Russia, well, a lot of people, not just Russia, is making warnings about the markets. It's I haven't looked yet this morning, but there was some pretty volatile movements yesterday on the gas. And so let's talk about the price per barrel this morning. At present, we want to make sure we have it. Where are we? Brent crude. Oh, it dropped back below 100. It's $93.41. And so the chart price, if you go to either marketsbusinessinsider.com on commodities, or you can go to crude oil prices today at oilprice.com. And let's see where that was, because the reports were that it was over there, 100 mark over the weekend. So, wow, that's an interesting one. Rare earths. Well, you go to some of these pages, they got some pretty good stuff, but I don't want to be interrupted. Oil production dependent on the Strait of Hormuz could come to a complete halt within a month, says Putin. He warned about the serious risks that the U.S. and Israel's, we should call it what it is, full-scale invasion of Iran, full-scale war against Iran. You can't just say, you have to say Trump's full-scale war against Iran. You know, you can't just say the conflict in Iran. That's not honest. You have to say Trump's full-scale war in Iran could pose a threat to the global energy markets. Last year, around a third of the global seaborne oil exports went through the strait, Putin said at a government meeting on the global energy markets on Monday. That's 14 million barrels a day. 80% of that went to Asian and Pacific nations, he said. Now this route is closed. Traffic through the strait has dropped by 80% over the past week after the U.S. and Israel launched their bombing campaign against Iran. Several tankers were hit in the exchanges. The developments pushed crude above 100 and prompted expectation of emergency measures from the EU and other major economies. I saw an interesting analysis yesterday. So up near the northern part of the Gulf, there's an island, and there's 2 islands owned by Iran there. One very close, which is down in the southern part, right at the tip of the Straits of Hormuz. When you go up through that loopy place where they got to get through the one crowded space, right? And the other is a larger island up toward the north, both controlled by Iran. Okay, and Iran has this island up on the top where it was loading. It's where they load tankers with oil, and so there were 3 tankers in there, and these tankers are they weren't wanting to leave. Well, what they are saying is that the Iranian tankers are being allowed through the Straits of Hormuz. And so those 3 ships are expected to be loaded and leave with Iranian oil headed for China. And they have to go around the Straits of Hormuz, but they won't get shot up by the Iranians because they're Iranian well, they're not even Iranian vessels. They're tagged with, they're flagged with flags from a foreign country, some other country. But they're hauling Iranian gas, and so they will go around that, oil, I mean. And so they will go around the Straits of Hormuz, and they're going to be completely safe. And I wonder when the U.S. side, because I don't put it past them, will start bombing those. And I haven't had a chance to research that and find out, excuse me, what is going on. So far, the only ones that have been shot at and destroyed are Western, really. The U.S. coalitions are destroying Ukrainian Navy ships or alleged Navy ships, and they're doing that even in Sri Lanka, like we reported last week. But and then that one they shouldn't have blown up. That one was nothing. Trump's like, oh geez, they're out there. They weren't even safe over there. That's because they didn't even have any weapons on board. They had nothing. They had gone for a parade sort of thing in China, and on the way back, Trump blew them up. They weren't involved, couldn't be involved, had no armaments of any kind, because that was part of the deal for being able to participate in the fleet thing that was showing up, and it was Iran, and they were talking with China. And I think that if that there is some sort of fine line being taken, and I haven't had enough chance to research it yet, that is talking about defining it as China supports Iran, and so therefore you don't want them to get the oil from Iran, but you also don't want to piss off China, right? That's not something that I don't know. I wonder if there's any effort to be careful on any of this, is all I'm asking, and with who's getting bombed. Anyway, Putin goes on. That's 14 million barrels a day, traffic through the strait, and the price is over 100. Oil production dependent on the strait is fully stopping in the coming months, and it's already dropping, the president said. And restoring production will take weeks or even months after this. Global oil prices are already rising, Putin said, adding that the increased amount to over 30% in the past week. Disruption in energy supplies is boosting inflation and is leading to industrial output decline. The world is about to find itself in what Putin calls an inevitable new price reality. And Russia remains a reliable energy supplier, he said, adding that it will continue to provide oil and gas to its friend nations that it considers reliable partners. And according to Putin, the list includes many Asian nations and EU members, Slovakia and Hungary. And on Monday, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban and Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó urged Brussels to lift the ban on Russian oil and gas, especially amid the escalating conflict in the Middle East. And earlier, the genius of Scott Bessent he announced we're easing sanctions on Russian oil to stabilize the market. We're even going to let India buy some. We'll let them. How about that? So there you have it. This will piss off a lot of people in America, right? Russia has won its first Paralympic gold of 2026. Varvara Voronchikina. You know what? That would have to be where the right udarenia, the right stress is. Voronchikina won the Super G, whatever that is, as Russia returned to the Paralympics under its own national flag for the first time in 10 years. Alpine skier Voronchikina won the women's Super G title on Monday at the 2026 Paralympics in Italy, Giving Russia its first gold member of the Games as a country made a symbolic return to the competition under its own flag. This is the first time since 2014 that Russian athletes have competed under their own flag, following a decade of restrictions and bans from international Paralympic competitions. The Super G, or Supergiant Slalom, is an alpine skiing discipline that blends elements of traditional downhill speed with giant slalom's more technical turning, demanding precision and high velocity from competitors. And Vorochihina's victory continued her successful Paralympic campaign, as she had already won a bronze medal in the downhill event, her first Paralympic podium visit. Another Russian alpine standout, Alexei Bugaev, took bronze in the men's downhill event, adding to Russia's early medal haul. The Russian Paralympic team was cleared to compete earlier this year after Moscow won an appeal in the Court of Sport Arbitration against the International Ski and Snowboard Federation. The body had barred athletes from Russia and Belarus despite the International Paralympic Committee fully reinstating athletes from both nations. And many Russian athletes were banned from competing after the World Anti-Doping Agency investigated in 2015 following allegations of doping, which Moscow denies. Dozens of bans were overturned on appeal, which said there had been no evidence to impose sanctions. The Milano Cortina 2026 opened on Friday in Verona and are scheduled to run through March 15. 6 Russian athletes are competing. So there you go. Let's see. The Iran war has shown that EU sanctions on Russian energy are strategic blunders, especially when prices crossed $100 a barrel, said Kirill Dmitriev. In a series of posts on X on Sunday and Monday, Dmitriev commented on the rise in oil prices since the start of the U.S.-Israeli, let's call it what it is, the unprovoked mass invasion, the unprovoked Donald Trump and Netanyahu war on Iran last month. In one of the messages, he mocked, Dmitriev did, the EU policymakers over what he described as short-sighted policy. Bingo, welcome to $100 plus oil. Most thought this was impossible. Predicted $100+ maybe in June. Now, as most EU bureaucrats still don't grasp the consequences, predict Russian energy vital and survival and strategic blunders of restricting it will be fully exposed. Diversify to survive, he said. Those are important words, diversify to survive, and a lot of the world are learning it. Because Trump is threatening Iran with 20 times more death, fire, and fury. Trump's unprovoked war in Iran. As the Brent prices peaked at $120 a barrel, Dmitriev noted that $150 plus is the new oil target, maybe even $200 plus a possibility in a prolonged conflict. He went on to explain, the oil issue is no longer about just the Strait of Hormuz, but about attacks on oil and gas infrastructure across the Middle East. The oil rally is somewhat mitigated by reports that G7 countries are discussing a coordinated release of oil from their strategic reserves, which are also down, but they have them. The U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran, triggering Tehran's retaliation, significantly raises the risk for vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz, the key artery. Maritime traffic through the waterway collapsed by as an estimated 80%. Plus, none of them can get insurance. And you have to have insurance to leave the port. The EU faced a similar price shock when it sanctioned Russia following the escalation in 2022, blah, blah, blah. U.S. President Trump brushes off the ongoing price surge on Sunday, said that the higher oil costs caused by his unprovoked war against Iran were a very small price to pay for USA and world safety and peace. Oh, yeah, that's what we're creating. World safety and peace. Donald Trump is still the peace president, in other words, right? We still have a peace president, friends and neighbors. I forgot that we had a peace president. How could I be so foolish? Where is, let's see, this was entertaining. I just I like listening to her. She stumbles all over herself when she speaks, and you can never, you never know what she's going to say. And now Kaja Kallas has said that the bloc, the EU, has given $195 billion in aid since 2022. And Trump says, and I think he's pretty much accurate, it's well over 150 billion. But Trump says 300 billion. I think he's conflating and adding the two numbers together. And I think it is closer to 350 billion between them all. And Orban right now is holding up with his veto, and one other place is holding up with a veto. The other 90 billion that's supposed to be coming. Let's see, European Union is 195 billion on Ukraine. According to Kaja Kallas, she revealed the updated figure amid growing unease and division among state members about Brussels continuing to fund the military and financial aid to Kiev. Frankly, I wonder too, when does it end? When do they quit doing it? To date, the EU is Ukraine's number one supporter with $195 billion. That's $225 billion since 2022. Kallas said on Monday in a keynote at the EU Ambassador Conference. These guys have so many conferences. This chick is forever at a conference. I mean, she doesn't have to work. You just go to conferences and give platitudes to everybody around the world. Well, yeah, it's great, man. Give more money. Pay me. Give me. I control the money. The previous estimate released by her in December was at $187 billion. It's actually, about $10 billion more, about 8 billion, seven something billion euro higher. The figure does not include the 90 billion, the $105 billion loan, but 90 billion euro loan that is currently in the works that Ukraine is waiting for. They want that badly, and Orban is holding it up. The loan faces uncertain future as Hungary blocked it last month as part of its dispute about Kiev halting Russian oil supplies via the Druzhba pipeline. Slovakia signaled it may veto the loan, with Prime Minister Fico slamming it as essentially a gift that Ukraine would not repay. Last week, Ukraine's Zelensky issued a threat, and he really did, against Hungarian Prime Minister Orban for blocking the funds, and said he would let the Ukrainian military speak to Orban in his own language. So he's going to send the military into Hungary unless he supports this $90 billion. Meanwhile, fresh concerns about corruption in Ukraine have been raised again after Hungarian authorities seized tens of millions of dollars in cash and 9 kilos of gold from Ukrainian armored vehicles near Budapest last week. Ukrainian officials accuse Hungary of theft and state banditism, and Budapest demands immediate answers from Ukraine, saying that the shipment raises serious question about the Ukrainian war mafia. And Kiev has been hit by multiple corruption scandals. In November, anti-corruption agencies uncovered a $100 million kickback scheme of Energoatom. That investigation led to the resignation of several high-ranking officials, including Minister German Galushenka and Zelensky's Andrei Yermak. Number 2 that they got rid of. And so the mafia is all in control in Ukraine, funded by Kaja Kallas, right? Hungary and Slovakia are the only EU nations standing up to the Godfather in Kiev, and they truly, these two, Hungary and Slovakia, are the only ones that truly represent European interests. And this is by Tariq Amar. I've shared some stories with by him in the past. Not sure I can get through it though. Probably not. It's probably too long, but we're going to give it a shot. We'll try some speed recitals. Politics can be very rough, yet usually as long as they don't collapse into war, at least in public, a certain minimum pretense of decorum is maintained, especially by governments vitally dependent on each other's support. Ukraine, under the rule of never re-elected Vladimir Zelensky, however, is anything but a normal political system. It is in this context that Zelensky's latest folly needs to be seen. Zelensky has threatened Hungary's Viktor Orban, telling him he will hand the prime minister's address over to, home address, over to our guys in the military so that they can communicate with him in their own language. Obviously, this isn't even a hint of violence anymore, but the equivalent of a mafia godfather placing a dead horse's head on your pillow or leaving a bullet on your doormat. The reason? Orban is exercising his right within the EU not to agree to yet another insane loan, the kind that will never be paid back, at least not by anyone in Ukraine, for Zelensky's astronomically corrupt regime. Orban is right about that loan, yet that isn't even the core issue of the scandal. That is the fact that Zelensky feels he can issue direct mafia-style threats against another leader of an EU member state. Regarding Zelensky, there is no surprise here. He has been at the top of a regime that combines a bizarre sense of entitlement, shameless demands, outrageously greedy corruption, and repulsive record of sabotage and assassination, very much even against its Western backers. Ask Germans who still have spine about the Nord Stream attack, for instance. Or if you can't find a German with a spine, ask Orban, who correctly calls it state terrorism. What needs more emphasis than Zelensky's depraved sense of impunity is that he has a reason to feel that way. It is true that in this instance, the EU Commission has publicly protested against his barbaric behavior. But let's be realistic. That's a formality, nothing but a slap on the wrist for appearance's sake. What really matters is that first, the West as a whole, and recently the EU elites on their own, have spent years emboldening Zelensky and his regime by feeding Ukrainian corruption. True. Accepting and spreading Kiev's lies, also true, and suppressing any criticism of this sort of policy as Russian talking points. You're Putin's puppet. Indeed, in the EU, Hungary and Slovakia as well have been harassed and threatened and treated as pariahs for their resistance to this coddling of Zelensky. It is all the more remarkable that both countries have principally stuck to their guns, even while having to concede ground repeatedly. This may be a coincidence, but it is a remarkable fact that just one day after Zelensky's open mafia boss hit, Hungary hit his ultra-sleazy regime where it hurts by striking at its money. In a certainly deliberate, spectacular operation, balaclavas, body armor, and assault rifles included, and carefully caught on camera, the video is kind of cool, Hungarian anti-terrorist forces stopped a Ukrainian currency and gold shipment crossing their country in 2 armored transports, arresting and temporarily detaining 7 Ukrainians. The Hungarian officials found $40 million, 35 million euros, and 9 kilos of gold. While the detained were released back to Ukraine, the money and gold and the transporters stayed in Hungary. Kiev has called the Hungarian measures state terrorism, which is as absurd as Orban's assessment of the Nord Stream attack. is compelling. The Ukrainian government and Oshad Bank that had organized the transport claim that everything is legal, but the Hungarian authorities see things differently. Their customs agencies say the transport is suspected of being a money laundering operation. It is. They also maintain that among those detained is a former high-ranking general of Ukraine's combined intelligence service and secret police. Ukrainian journalists, in turn, have named the general as Gennady Kuznetsov, a former head of Kiev's Center for Anti-Terror Special Operation. Budapest Customs has made the public some intriguing figures. In the first 2 months of this year, total currency and gold shipped to Ukraine via Hungary has already amounted to $900 million, 420 million euros, and 146 kilograms of gold. Clearly, that amount finally stopped, and it seems seized were just a very small part of a much larger ongoing flow. Crazy times these days with the mafia in Ukraine. I appreciate you being with me today on International Flavor. I'm Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. You are on Damn Radio. We are here every morning from 7:30 to 9 with International Flavor, and from 7:30 to 8:45 on Fridays with Civic Outlaws. We hope you continue to join in with us and listen to the moments. We have some pretty good stuff coming up for Civic Outlaws on Friday, too, so make sure you're paying attention. We'd love to have you there. Thank you so very much for being with us, and you have a very nice day.